Okay, well, listen, welcome everybody. Glad that a few of us could turn out this evening. My name is Rick Eisted. I think most of you that are on here know me already. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Calgary Fish Creek, and I also sit on the District Learning and Development Committee, responsible for these monthly club learning webinars. And I will be your Zoom host for this evening. In continuing the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge that most of us here this evening that are on this call live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, those being the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation of Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. I'd like to welcome and thank everyone for attending tonight's webinar entitled The Case for Literacy in Alberta. Our presenters this evening are Stacey Pinney, a member of the Rotary Club of Calgary Downtown, and Janet Lane, who is the Director of Human Capital Centre at the Canada West Foundation. As usual, our webinar is scheduled for 1 hour and it is being recorded. Live transcription has been activated, so if you want it activated on your own device, look for the live transcription CC button at the bottom of your screen. Everyone's audio and visual has been turned off except for our panelists. Please use the chat button to communicate with each other and the Q&A button to ask questions that come to mind, so you won't forget them at the end, because we will deal with everyone's questions at the end of the presentation. Now, let me share a little bit about Stacey Pinney, based on the bio that she sent me. As a former educator, literacy consultant, and founder and CEO of Calgary Reads, Stacey Pinney has been helping children experience the life-changing magic of reading for more than 40 years. Stacey's career began in the grade 1 classroom, where she became passionate about her critical role in helping children develop a love of reading. It became her mission to help all children read with confidence and joy by grade 3. And this was the driving vision of Calgary Reads. As a reading champion, placemaker, and possibilitarian. I couldn't find that in the Oxford Dictionary, but I think that means big dreamer. One of Stacey's proudest achievements is the Little Red Reading House. Our Rotary Club has been there, by the way, and if you haven't been there, I highly recommend you do it. A magical home in Inglewood that lets children experience the sacred wonder of family reading time and the power of book ownership. Stacey is proud to have been an active community leader and connector through various organizations like Leadership Calgary, the Junior League of Calgary, the First 2000 Days Network, and many more. She feels privileged to have received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee and Platinum medals. And in 2019, the University of Alberta presented Stacey with the Alumni Honor Award for her outstanding contributions to her profession and her community. Stacey is most proud of being the mom of 3 amazing daughters who have been her best teachers. She also loves her new role as Nana and storyteller to 3 wonderful grandchildren. Pretty impressive bio, I would say. Well done, Stacey. I will send your full bio out to everyone who's with us this evening. Stacey, I know you plan on introducing Janet, so please take it away.
Thank you very much, Rick. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. Thank you for letting us introduce this important new case that Janet is the author of to Rotarians across the province. This is the, what is it called? The inaugural release date or something. You guys are the very first. This document is so hot off the press, it's not even off the press completely. But we made a commitment to the Downtown Rotary Club, who are part of they funded part of this research, and we had said that we wanted to not only share and circulate the report once it's completely designed up and ready for circulation, but because we know that people are not reading as much as we would like them to be, we also wanted to do presentations. So we're really pleased, Rick, that you let us come into this district series, and we look forward to being invited to any Rotary Club to come out and share this important information. Tonight, I wanted to just give you a little bit of background before Janet takes us into the report so that you could understand a little bit about why we commissioned the Canada West Foundation and Janet to do this document. Many people in Calgary, anyways, are aware that the nonprofit Calgary Reads entered into dissolution about June of last year. That's when a charity disposes of all of its assets and revokes its charitable status. And it was an interesting time to do that, because when a charity forms, you are created as a result of there being an issue, and you have a solution perhaps to address the issue. And the issue of childhood literacy and children learning by grade 3 was a problem that I've spent my career hoping I could solve. And we didn't solve it as a charity, and the problem has just gotten worse in our province, in our city, and the pandemic escalated and shone a light on the inequity that is being experienced in classrooms and in homes all across our province. And we decided if we were not able as a small nonprofit to solve this problem, it was our responsibility to create a different strategy. So we call it the dandelion story. And this dandelion, as if any of you were a child, and you were, that ever sat in a field and took a dandelion that had gone to seed and blew on it, and you see the seeds scatter everywhere. This is the metaphor that we sort of said, Calgary Reads is going to seed. We're making a big wish. We're giving all of our assets away to 7 bigger organizations who hopefully can spread out, scale up, and provide sustainable resourcing for each of the programs that we leave a legacy for. It was very exciting for us when the Rotary Club of Calgary, the Downtown Club, agreed to take over the Calgary Reads Big Book Sale, because they know how to fundraise and have events or throw a party, and that's essentially what the book sale is. It's an 18-year tradition in our community that not every charity has the luxury of finding a fundraiser that actually helps it address its mission, which is to ensure that people are reading more. That's what we were set up to do. And the book sale, if you have ever been, you are affirmed that people in Calgary are still reading, because we see about 12 to 15,000 people through the doors of that book sale, bringing roller suitcases to fill with books. And they are going home, hopefully, to read, not just use them as a decorating element or to prop up a window. And that Rotary is taking on the sale and stewarding the sale is very exciting for Calgary Reads, because it is an important fundraiser, and all of the funds from the sale going forward will continue to be reinvested into early childhood literacy. And as you will hear from Janet, who brings at the end of this research some strong recommendations, you can't move forward with what you know needs to be done unless you also can find the funding to ensure that it happens. So the Rotary, as stewards of the sale, will ensure that the funds that were raised through the donation and the purchase of books continue to ensure that children in our community continue to have the support, the books in their homes, and the reading role models in their lives. And you will again hear from Janet how important it is. We actually learned at Calgary Reads that it's easier to give away houses and vans and programs and books than it is to give away what we were probably best known for, which was our passion and our inspiration and our ability to sort of rally the troops towards a reading revolution. And so this spring, you're going to also hear about a new campaign that is being stewarded by the Poverty Reduction Strategy in Calgary. And the group is called the 369. And we are very hopeful that you will help us after you are hearing this event tonight, after you come to the big book sale, after you go online in a few weeks and pull up the Left Unread campaign materials, that you too will have an important conversation with your family, with your friends, with your book club, with your neighbors about everything you hear tonight and how important it is that all of us commit to this reading revolution and get behind trying to change the trajectory and these statistics that you will hear. Help us spread the words. Come and get a book, a lawn sign that is promoting the importance that no child in our province be left unread and they be surrounded with the words they know, they need to know in order to grow up to be contributing to this society. All things you'll hear from Janet. So we knew as part of our legacy that we didn't have much data to tell a story about what was really going on in Alberta. And many people don't believe that Albertans don't read, but you're going to find out tonight that it's more true than we would want it to be. So Calgary Reads used some of its remaining legacy funds. The Rotary has supported this research. They are also supporting the Left Unread campaign, which will promote messaging and advocacy towards investments in early literacy. And Janet is here tonight as the director of the Human Capital Center. Janet champions the development of skilled and productive workforce that's able to fulfill the potential of the West's and Canada's economy. As the demands on the workforce evolve, her work focuses on the need for us to understand and build the competencies required for new jobs and changing work environments. She is a subject matter expert in literacy and essential skills development. I feel very fortunate to have first met Janet years ago when she was the executive director of Literacy Alberta, another organization in our province that no longer exists, just as Calgary Reads does not anymore. And Janet also is a contributor to the work of the Poverty Reduction Strategy through her participation in the 369 group that is going to be championing early literacy and trying to resurrect to the reading revolution that we all proudly want to be a part of. She has definitely got an eclectic, let's say. I find these literacy and math and finance people don't always, see the world in the same way, but Janet comes with a successful career in financial services, and she really does know how to grow organizations, and she contributes in so many ways to our community being a better place. And Janet, I'm just really pleased that you're here tonight, that you are the author of this report, and that you are helping us spread the words. So over to you.
Thanks so much, Stacey. And good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your interest in this subject. I know it can sound a little dry, but actually I'll try to make it a little more fun. I am very impressed with Rotary's support of literacy back in the day when I was at Literacy Alberta as the executive director. We used to be very grateful for the funding that came in on an annual basis from Rotary in Calgary. I don't know if Paul Cochran is still a member, but if he is, pass my best wishes on to him. Canada West Foundation is a nonprofit think tank that is based in Calgary, but looks at issues across the West. And Why is that not working? Oh, there we are. And we've been around for over 50 years. You've probably heard of us before. My work has been, as mentioned, on the human capital side. This piece that we are going to be publishing next week, and you're going to receive in your inbox tonight the executive summary from this piece of work. Will be my 7th piece, my 3rd big paper on literacy and the problems that are caused when people don't have enough literacy in my time at the Canada West Foundation, which is probably one of the reasons that Stacey and her colleagues thought, well, maybe we should ask Janet if she'd be interested in doing this work. And indeed, I really am. Oops, sorry. So this is a quote from a book that I am reading right now. It is taking me a while because it is a beautiful piece of literature. But this piece early in the reading just struck me as being so evocative of what literacy is all about, and how this one is actually a young woman that is learning for the first time. She'd never seen a book. And then she learns about the sounds and the squiggles on the page. She's learning it in Greek, so it's even more of a squiggle. But each sound forms words, and to link words is to construct worlds. This goes beyond anything she had ever been able to imagine before. And that's what we want for every child and for every adult. And for me, reading is a source of joy. Not everybody wants to know about the source of joy. They want to know about the economics. I'm going to cover both. One second. Don't normally have that problem. So what is literacy? We talk about literacy, but what is it? It's not just the capacity to decode words. If you're spending all your time decoding the words, you're not spending the time with your cognitive ability to apply what you've read. You're not being able to take what you've read and apply it in daily life, in work, in learning, and in solving problems, and in getting by in the world. And frankly, I think if you don't have literacy, as we say in the title, life is just really hard. Literacy is the most important skill. It is the learning to learn skill. If you don't have literacy skill, you are not going to efficiently learn anything else. You may be able to learn to do things that are routine with your hands that don't involve a lot of thinking about it, if it just becomes sort of a routine and habitual thing. But if you're really wanting to learn new skills, and let's face it, we're all having to do that every day, you have to have good literacy skills. It is the foundation of all other learning. And in fact, numeracy, which is closely linked to literacy, if you don't have good literacy skills, you're not going to learn your math skills either. So when we don't teach children to read, we hurt them twice. It is obviously a skill for communication, and it is the core of the knowledge-based economy. All of us probably on this call read on a daily basis, and we read for information, and we read to communicate, and we read to learn, and we read for pleasure, and all of that. But it's not something that everybody is doing on a daily basis. It is the most important skill from a personal perspective too, because it is how we learn to understand the world. Like Anna in the earlier quotation, she didn't know that other worlds existed. And after she was reading, she learned that. And this is how we make sense of the world. It can inform, it can inspire, it can transform, it can be a source of joy. And in fact, it's so important that the Supreme Court of Canada in 2012 decided to make it a human right. Other countries in the world have signed on to that as well. When we measure literacy, we've got 5 levels, and at level 1 and 2, this is at level 1, people are spending all their cognitive capacity to just decode the words. And when you put a piece of prose in front of somebody at level 1 or level 2 literacy, they may be able to find the number or the color or the name of the street, but they are not going to be able to create new information, to analyze, to evaluate, to compare and contrast. Remember from school, compare and contrast, these 2 books or these 2 sentences. People with low levels of literacy are unable to do that. And yet we need higher levels of literacy to be able to solve problems. and solving problems is what we do every minute of every day once we've turned the alarm off. And it is also what we need to be able to think critically. And has it ever been more important to be able to think critically and to be creative? And a lot of us are hearing about the need for innovation. If you do not have high levels of literacy, you're not going to be able to do that. The problem in Alberta is, now this first stat, it was taken from a very small number of schools that actually tested children last year in the CBE. It is virtually impossible to find good data on how ready our children are to read. But 40% of kindergarten students in the schools that were assessed by the CBE in the last school year were not ready to learn to read. They were tested on 3 main areas. And in 2 of them, over 40% of them didn't actually have minimal skills. And only 30% had the skills ready to learn to read right now. 44% of 16 to 25-year-olds had low or poor literacy skills. Now, these are the ones that have just come out of our secondary schools, and a lot of them are in post-secondary. So think about that. 15% of working age adults had low, and 30% of working age adults had poor literacy skills. This means that 45% of adults in Alberta don't have the literacy skills to perform the tasks of most jobs in the economy. And we'll talk more about that later. That's a problem. And here you've got it in the numbers. So as you can see, 15% of Albertans are in the first column. And 30% in level 2 Albertans. Now, yes, we are doing a whole lot better for level 3 and levels 4 and 5 than the rest of Canada and the OECD. Well, kind of a bit better, not as much better as we might think we should be, given the highly educated workforce we've got here in Alberta. But we still have remarkably high levels of people at low literacy. Now, unfortunately, these assessments have not been done since, as you can see, 2011. The latest assessment is in the field, but there is no indication that, except for our immigrant populations, that the average Albertan has actually improved their literacy skill in the between times. And it's not just, the average is bad, but when you look and you see the average for 16 to 25-year-olds, and for it's our 16 to 25-year-olds are just slightly at the average. 26 to 35 go up just slightly over the average, and of level. Sorry, the level 3, and then from there it goes downhill. So by the time you get to 56 to 65-year-old, you may have literacy scores that are, again, well below level 3, which is a big problem as people age. And here's the problem for our 15-year-olds. It's not that we don't have good scores. In Alberta, we do have better scores than in the rest of Canada for our reading and our math. However, as you can see from this table, we've been dropping. Our teenagers are dropping in their reading and math skills. So are others, but our kids are dropping their scores faster than the rest of Canada and the OECD. So what this actually tells me is that we're getting closer and closer to the OECD average, and at a time when we used to be able to say that Alberta school systems were the best. In fact, there was only Finland that was any better than us at teaching kids. Well, not so much in the last 20 years. And here's the thing that really scared me out of the PISA results. For 15-year-olds, they just don't enjoy reading. And 25% think it's a waste of time, and 50% that say they only read when they absolutely must. And any of you that have a teenager at home will probably know that they would look at a video that more than they would look at a book. And I can tell you that videos are great. And you can learn a lot. God knows YouTube's helped me a lot too in figuring out how to do something. But if you're not reading, if you're using videos, it's taking you a whole lot longer to get what you could get from reading. And that's only part of the problem of not reading. But this is what is happening. Young teenagers especially are moving to digital rather than print materials. And this is a big problem because at the same time as literacy supply is falling, literacy demand is increasing, and I'll show you how that's happening in a minute. So literacy matters, and I've tried to, to get that point across. It matters to individuals, it does matter to society, and it matters to the economy. For individuals, life is hard when you can't read. People with low literacy skills are poorer, and that's why we're working through the poverty reduction group in Calgary to try to improve literacy, because it is actually something that is prevalent amongst people who experience poverty. They probably have low literacy skills or lower than they need in order to really to thrive. And because of that, and they're also earning lower incomes. That is a sort of vicious cycle. Food security is also a problem, which is one of the reasons why they're more likely to be in poor health. And they're often more unemployed and for longer periods. So even if they do find work, they're more often to be laid off first and those kinds of things. And they're not finding well-paying jobs that have benefits and a good quality to them. On the other hand, people with high literacy skills are more likely to get higher raises. In fact, it's 15 times more the wage increases for people with high levels of literacy skill, which again shows that literacy is a virtuous circle. The more you read, the better you get at reading, the higher levels your literacy, the better off you are likely to be, and the more better off you're likely to be as life goes on. And the opposite is true for people with low literacy. But there are a couple of other things I wanted to point out about the importance of literacy, and I mentioned this a little bit before. The need for critical thinking and discernment I don't think it's ever been greater. You just have to, look at social media to understand what can happen when people are not discerning whether what they're reading is valuable and valid. And that comes from reading more. The more you read, if you're reading, pieces that are valid and factual, the better your background knowledge, and the better your background knowledge, the more you're going to be able to read and understand what you're reading, be critical thinkers, and make good decisions. And the other area that I wanted to point out is about parenting. Parents are their children's first teachers. It starts at birth, and language development is a precursor for literacy development. And for those of us who are parents, we know the joy of just sitting down with our children and holding them close and reading aloud to them. And I know from my, I had 4 kids, and I'll tell you what, they would be, 5:30s when I would just turn off the stove and say, okay, we just have to calm everything down. Let's sit down and read a book. We'll have supper 10 minutes later. And that was always a thing that improved the tensions in my house at the supper hour. And so there's so many pieces around reading with children, but not the least of which is that it helps to build their brains. And so if you want to give your children the best start in life, reading to them is one of the major things. For society, as I've said, people who have low literacy tend to be in poor health. So society benefits when people have good literacy skills. Because of that, that's just one of the areas that we save tax dollars in when we don't have to pay for people with poor health. It's not in the paper, but it's also true that people who have low literacy skills are more likely to be incarcerated. They're more likely to be victims of crime, not just perpetrators of crime. People with good literacy skills, on the other hand, are those volunteers down at the Calgary Reads book sale, and they're the ones that go out and vote, and in many cases, and they're also more inclined to believe that they can trust their government. For the economy, and this is, for those of you who are employers as well or have work colleagues, anybody who's worked with people with low literacy levels will have seen that they work less productively. There's more do-overs. They're just not on the job as fully engaged as people with higher levels of literacy. They can end up in more workplace accidents. They also, as I've said, have poorer health. They're more likely to be absent because of all of that, which again, in turn, affects productivity. And then they're less adaptable to change. And literacy, as I've said, is the learning skill. And when you need to change, and our workplaces are changing on a daily basis, literacy is that learning to learn skill that helps you to adapt more quickly. Literacy demands of jobs in the economy over the last, till 2015, 2015, which was the last time we had this. There are no level 1 jobs in the economy anymore. Every job has increased, even if it's just because of the digital requirements to clock in on your laptop or your phone, or a digital device of some kind to say, I did this piece of work today. What's the next piece of work I need to do? So every job requires some form of literacy. The most jobs in the economy are at level 3. 94% of the jobs in the economy require level 3 or higher jobs. And here's the scary part. Here's that demand against supply. So you can see that we have way more people at level 1 that are needed, way more than at level 2 that are needed, a whole bunch less than are needed in levels 3, 4, and 5. And that's a problem, because that means that we have low productivity. And you'll have been hearing everywhere in the news lately about how Canada's productivity issues is causing a problem with our competitiveness. And we are actually losing ground on the competition side. We are still in the G7, but perhaps we don't belong there anymore. I love this sentence. This says it all. A country does not become richer after it educates its workforce. It becomes richer because it educates its workforce. And yes, we are educating our workforce, but we're not doing a good enough job of it. A 1% rise in literacy levels, in average literacy levels, will increase productivity by 3%. So, oh gosh, that's wrong. Sorry, it's productivity by 5% and GDP by 3%. I'm sorry that got mixed up. I will change that and send you fresh, because this is a really important number. Productivity increased by 5% and GDP by 3%. That's $60 billion to the Canadian economy. And as I say in the paper, it wouldn't cost us that much to fix the problem. So how do we solve the problem? Well, it's through literacy instruction and practice across the lifespan, because we can start with babies and toddlers, but we don't want to see it lost in our seniors either. So let's look at those as individual solutions. Oh, but before we go there, how does one learn to read? I love this graphic, because it shows you that there are many strands that come together. And actually they come together slowly, 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 and then all of a sudden. And so as with so many things, when children are learning to read, and those of you who have been there will have seen the day the light bulb went on in your child when they said, now I understand that those letters say that word, and that word means this. And it starts because they're watching the pictures, but as they build their understanding of their background knowledge. So that, I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you don't have language in which to put words, written words to. So you need the vocabulary and the background knowledge and how you put sentences together, and things like time spans, and you're not going to do something yesterday, you do something tomorrow, and all of those kinds of verbal reasoning things, and all the literacy knowledge, and then the word recognition, that it's at, cat, sat, mat, fat, that you start to see this coming together in a child. And if you've got a bucket of letters on the floor with them, you can see them playing with with how those words come together, and it's sort of very slowly they start to make sense of it, and then all of a sudden they can read. I can read, mommy, I can read. And then they can read better and better and better, and the more you have experience reading, the better you get. It is a virtuous circle. So our recommendations for how to solve this problem start, as we've said, with the various life stages. So we've got parents. How do we make sure that parents understand the importance of reading with their children, but also with just doing language with their children, playing with them, getting the facial conversational turns. When a baby babbles at you, you babble back. When it sticks out his tongue, you stick your tongue back. Or actually, if you start that, then a baby will learn to do that. This is all the building of conversation. Conversation is language. Language leads to literacy. So we need to make sure that parents are supported in this, and everybody who has a parent or a child in their life can be part of that. When we give the Easter Bunny gift this Easter, pop a little book in there as well. And digital devices are great. They are, they can be a godsend. It certainly keeps those children on the plane next to you quiet, but it's not a good substitute. And children need to learn how to hold a book, how to turn the pages of a book. They probably want to chew on a book. And there are a fair number of children in this city that go to school on the first day of kindergarten that have never done that. And daycares and preschools, they should be held accountable for providing quality literacy activities. As I say in the paper, a study was done, and 40% of daycare workers do not do daily literacy activities with the children in their care. And this means that they probably haven't had the training in how to do that. And that's appalling. And as we spend billions of dollars on childcare, with this wonderful program that's coming from the federal government, we have to make sure that our daycare staff have the education and the understanding of what it means to play with children and do literacy activities. It can be a lot of fun and very rewarding. Education systems. Now, this is something that our system is starting to do with the new curriculum for grades for early childhood. They are actually starting to assess children for readiness for reading upon entering school. But as I showed you earlier, that stat that said that 40% of kindergarten children that were assessed weren't ready to learn. They weren't all assessed. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me to not be able to tell within a few weeks of kindergarten starting where a child is in terms of their readiness to learn how to read. We are going to be doing that. So this is good, but we have to make sure that every child is assessed early, very early in kindergarten, and then early in grade 1 to see if they're at grade 1 level, because reading is starting to be taught. It is being taught in kindergarten. And so if they're falling behind by the time they get to the first day of grade 1, then they're going to continue to fall behind unless targeted interventions are put in place for them. And so we need to know what the extent of the problem is school-wide and province-wide, but we also need to know for individual children, because they can be helped. And so in order to help them, we have to provide the financial and instructional resources. And we need more aides in the classrooms who can help the children who are managing really well, so that the teacher who has presumably got the training to do this work can actually go and work with the children who are at risk of failing to learn. And in fact, studies have shown, everything I found, and certainly anecdotally, teachers in the past have not been taught how to teach using that reading rope that I showed you earlier. It's just supposed to sort of happen that kids will learn if you read to them and they read with them and they run their finger under the words on a page. That might be part of it and it might be helpful, but teachers need to actually do targeted instruction around all those strands of the reading rope. And we are starting to teach teachers, but I think it should be that all teachers, because we've got so many kids who come into Calgary from other countries who may not be literate when they get there, but they're not put into grades 1, 2, or 3. If they're 14, they're going into grade 7 or 8. And at that stage, they still need to learn how to read. And the less they learn how to read, the more poorly they will do, and they're more likely that there will be social issues attached with that child. So all teachers need to learn how to teach children how to read. And K-12 learners need to have the pleasure, the understanding of how pleasurable it is to read, but also how interesting it can be and how much they can learn through reading in order to develop, to further develop that capacity to critically think. The last time the reading list for K-12 was updated in this province, to the best of my knowledge, everything that I found told me it was 2005, which means that there are no books being studied in school in this city, in this province, officially, although I'm sure they are being read, that was written since before since the iPhone was invented and released. And so for a teenager who spends their life on their phone, they're not reading about others that are using phones. Now, I'm not saying using phones is a good thing necessarily, but it is their life and it is interesting to them and it is relevant to them. We have to make sure that the material that kids are reading is relevant or of interest. And I'm pretty sure that's not happening. Post-secondary institutions, 25% of students in post-secondary institutions do not have the literacy capacity to learn effectively. They probably then find it very difficult to do well. Eventually, they may fall out of their classes. They may actually drop out. We have a really high level of a failure out of our post-secondary systems. Our programs are designed to probably be about half as many students in our second and third years and fourth years as in first. And that's possibly got something to do with literacy. The study was done in Ontario, but I'm pretty sure it would be pervasive across the country. So I would recommend that we assess post-secondary learners upon entry for their capacity to learn effectively and efficiently, using their literacy, and provide targeted instruction. I know that they're assuming now that if you've got 80 coming out of grade 12 English, that you're fully literate. And that's probably true, but there are a lot of kids with under 80 going into post-secondary programs, and they may not have the skills they need. Employers, as I showed you, workers without the literacy skills can cause all kinds of trouble in the workplace. And it behooves employers to actually embed literacy and numeracy into the onboarding and ongoing upskilling training that they are needing to do, because jobs are becoming more knowledge intensive. As I showed you, there are no jobs left at level 1. And because we tend to lose literacy as we age, and low literacy can cause isolation. You're less socially engaged if you have low literacy. We want to encourage also that community organizations continue to advocate for programming for all age groups, but especially family literacy programming, but also for later in life, so that young that older people are being encouraged to keep their literacy skills up. It will keep them engaged in their communities and less isolated. And having said all of that, what we need to do is to target the youngest amongst us first. Like, we have to stop the vicious cycle that goes with children not being ready to learn how to read when they get to school, and then not reading by the end of grade 3. Because a child that is not reading fully by the end of grade 3, the chances are that they will then drop out of high school when they're in grade 10 or 11. And then we know that their lives will just be hard. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for the discussion. I guess I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Janet. Well done. There are some questions that I think we'd like to table, and we're just trying to decide between Stacy and I, who's going to handle this. Do you want to handle it, Stacy, or would you prefer I do it? You're
You
muted.
can, why don't you read off some of the questions, and then I can always join Janet in answering some of them.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
see questions now.
Sounds fair. So I'll just, Janet, if you're okay, I'll just read the questions to you, who they're from, and if you could then answer. It'll be all recorded anyway for future purposes. So Margie Boyens, who's a member of the Medicine Hat Rotary Club, she's asked a couple of questions here, but the first and obvious question I had was also, why no stats beyond 2011?
Right. And this is shocking, and I apologize, because it really, it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about if we don't have stats after 2011. We have traditionally done them every decade or so. And so there was results that came out there was a test that was done in 2003. The next one was done in 2011. The next one was due to be done in 2020, 2021. Guess what happened? The testing is done through an interview process. 25,000 Canadians have an interviewer go into their home and do the assessment with them. And so because of COVID, that didn't happen. So it was delayed. The results for the piece that's in the field right now are expected next year. So we will have more up to date. And yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Gasser, who's with Calgary North. Does it make a difference to the level of literacy if you are reading electronic versus print?
Good question. Actually, if you have high levels of literacy skill and then you spend all your time reading in print, you will probably lose literacy skill, because when we read online, we tend to read the first paragraph or so, then we scan down the rest of it, just looking for the highlights or the information that we were looking for or something like that. And then at the bottom, if we're reading something for information, and then at the bottom, we'll look for the conclusions. We might read the last 2 paragraphs. If we're reading online for and actually reading every line, then it wouldn't make a difference. But if we are scanning, and that is what we tend to do when we're reading online, depending on what we're reading, then you could actually lose some skill. One of the things that happens with reading fully and deeply is that you build empathy. And studies have shown that people who read mostly digitally actually are losing empathy skills.
I'll just add to that too, that if people want more information, the Canadian Pediatrician Society put out recommendations for children and the amount of screen time that they should be using, because it not only impacts literacy levels, but also language levels. So if you have young children in your life, Google those recommendations, and you will be alarmed at the number of children and families who are far exceeding the small amounts of time that kids should be on screens.
Not too surprising. Margie is asking, so how do we make reading more exciting and inviting?
I'm going to hand this to Stacy.
I think one of the biggest, again, most of my work is with children and youth, and they need to see more reading role models. If they never see the adults, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the teachers reading in their lives, they don't believe that it's something adults do, and children are just driven to copy their parents. So parents need to put down their devices. Teachers need to be able to do far more book talking. I like to say that teachers and librarians, and certainly our staff at Calgary Reads and our book bank people, are the best book hookers. And you've got to be a good salesperson to be able to have the right book appear at the right time in the life of a child. Even if you think of yourself as a reader, when your friend or family member recommends a book to you, you're much more likely to pick it up. So we need to do it more and talk about it more, and share at cocktail parties. What are we reading? And get everybody hooked on books. It's hard to compete with the video screens and with all the other things that we can do. But we've got to show it. Harry Potter is a perfect example that inspired a whole generation to want to read. And we need another amazing series such as that. And instead of talking about the latest, greatest Netflix, wouldn't it be awesome to have another incredible book series?
Yeah. What have you read lately is the question. Yeah.
Thanks, Stacy. Margie's made a comment here. What could be cool is to encourage young people to write their own stories about whatever hobby, immigration experience, aspirations. And I think, we Rotarians are also told to share our stories with each other, because we don't do a very good job of really communicating what we do and what we're all about in the world. And so more people would want to kind of join the cause. So I think that's a good idea. We need to do more storytelling, not yak, but I mean, telling stories that are meaningful, relevant, and timely. Mm-hmm. I think the next one is from Trevor Axworthy, Calgary Downtown. I think it's been answered, but maybe you could just confirm. Data from 2011 is pretty stale. Who is responsible for conducting literacy competency testing? And I know you mentioned 25,000.
Yeah, it's the OECD is the driver, because they do it around the world, because we need to know how we're comparing with our peers. In Canada, CMEC, the Council of Ministers of Education Canada, is in charge, and Employment and Social Development Canada is also involved in analyzing the results. And so, as I said, the latest test is in the field. The data has probably been compiled, being pulled together by now, and it's being analyzed as we speak. I would love to see this happen more often, but it's a very expensive process, because we do oversample in Canada, and those individual interviews with 25,000 Canadians add up.
Two similar questions here, but Keith Walker from Medicine Hat Sunrise is asking, can you please document about the role of libraries with literacy? What role did libraries or librarians play in terms of literacy?
They play a huge role, and sadly, librarians are almost extinct. And most schools, for school libraries, don't even call them libraries anymore. They're now called the Learning Commons. And in many cases, schools did a lot of book cleansing, if you will, so they could make more room for computers. So this was a big advocacy piece for us for a while, was, you know, take back the library and claim it for the amazing space that it is in a school. And our public libraries, I think, do phenomenal jobs. We have an incredible library system in Calgary that have, I'd say, really committed to reinvest and reinvigorate the library system, whether it's through design, like our central library downtown. They're very busy adding, you know, fire trucks and special effects to all of their locations in Calgary. And they do some really important early and family literacy programming at libraries. So they are a very important part of the puzzle. The Calgary Public Library is a part of our 369 leaders table. And someone did ask what the 369 stood for. So maybe I'll just throw that in right here. The vocabulary of a 3-year-old is a predictor for the 6-year-old's ability to come to read, and the 6-year-old's ability to come to read in grade 1 is a predictor for this very important transition from grade 3 to grade 4, typically when a child is 9 years of age, where they're no longer learning to read, but they're expected to know how to read to go on to learn for life. So these age 3, age 6, age 9 are very critical milestones in the literacy life of a child. So we named our group after these important milestones, because part of our hope is to push hard on Alberta education and hold them accountable to share more data. We're the only province in the country that no longer runs the early developmental instrument, which was a 5-year-old marker for their developmental milestones. And we need to get some of those early assessments back on track in our province.
Next week, we will publish the whole paper. It's just in design as I speak. And in the paper, which I'm hoping Rick will send out to everybody, there are stories of some really fun, really good, really worthwhile programs that are ongoing across pretty much Calgary, I think is where my mark, the stories I drew from. We have stories about the kinds of programming that is going on in order to encourage and make literacy exciting and fun and interesting to people. But we have, 400,000 children, and probably, if we're lucky, 1,000 of them are being influenced by these programs. So yeah, there's lots of work to do.
Well, thanks, ladies. We're at the top of the hour. I will send out the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation. And Janet, I only noted the one slide where you had the 3 and the 5 mixed up. So I'll make that correction and make a PDF of it and send it.
I don't think you'll be able to fix it because it's been designed, that slide. And so
okay.
I'll fully apologize. I will get it fixed and sent to you tomorrow.
Okay, that's great.
So
and then
people can wait until tomorrow to have it. That would be great.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you both. Very interesting, somewhat surprising. We kind of take literacy for granted in many ways in this country and other countries, but I very much enjoyed your message, and I hope everybody here say that they learned something this evening. I really want to also thank everybody that attended. I think all in, we were about 21 out of 22 that had actually registered. So look for a PDF from me from the PowerPoint slide presentation tomorrow. I'm also going to send Stacy's bio, because I think it's worth people learning and knowing a little bit more about what she brings to the table. I just even thought to myself, one of her priorities in life is with her 3 daughters and her 3 grandchildren. And I just asked, where she got the time to do all of this, but she's obviously found a way. Later in the week, you can expect an email from me with a link to this video recording, which will be uploaded onto our district YouTube channel. Our next webinar is in fact 2 weeks from tonight on Wednesday, April 19th, where we'll hear a different story. And this one we'll hear from Steve Ailes, who sits on the board of the Rotary Action Group on Addiction Prevention. Steve will talk about the opioid crisis and what his group is doing to change lives and save lives. So thanks, everybody. Thanks again for joining us this evening, and I wish you a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.